Mosab Hassan Yousef is the author of the New York Times bestseller, Son of Hamas. He was raised on Palestine in a very conservative Islamic community. Mosab's father was one of the founding members of the Hamas organization. At age 18, Mosab was imprisoned by the Israeli Shin, and in prison, through a number of experiences which he may care to share or not, it's all written up in his book, he came to take a very different view of Hamas than what he had before going in there. It caused him to question in his own mind who the true enemy was, whether it was Israel, the US, or Hamas. He was recruited to spy undercover, obviously, as a spy for the Shin Bet, and for 10 years with a code name of Green Prince, he revealed and thwarted by his activity and his comments many suicide bombers and terrorist activities. He spent 25 months in Israeli prisons to help support his cover. And in 2007, Mosab left Israel, immigrated to the United States, was granted political asylum, and wrote his book, Son of Hamas, cataloging in a very well-written fashion as well as compelling fashion his story. That book has been translated in 20 languages and is a New York Times bestseller. Interestingly, and I think is an important part of his story according to what he says in his book, after this agonizing separation from his family, from his homeland, and all of the personal suffering he endured at the hands of his enemies, he still believes, or he has come to believe, that loving your enemies is the only way to peace in the Middle East. It's with great pleasure and with great anticipation I introduce to you and present to you Mosab. Please.
Thank you very much. Good evening. I am not here to lecture, and I'm not here to preach. I am here to share and hopefully to learn. My life is like a dream. I came to this conclusion when I was reading the analogy of the cave of Socrates. Prisoners in a cave, looking at a blank wall. Behind them, there is a fire. And there are people passing between the prisoners and the fire. Now, the prisoners are chained from their necks to the wall behind them. And all they can see is the blank wall across from them. What they see on the walls is shadow. What Socrates says, that these shadows are their reality. It's the truth to them. This is what they can see. I personally have been in that cave. Actually, I spent long time in that cave, and I've seen all type of people, especially religious people of all groups. I know this is hard to say, and I'm not trying to offend anybody, but I think that we are all in the country of freedom, have the right to think out loud and to learn from each other and share our experiences. when I see the deception of the world and I see many victims and more children dying every day, it affects me in a different way than any other person, I think, because I witnessed bloodshed. And I witnessed suicide bombing scenes when I was required at some point to identify the suicide bomber, to know who sent them. And it's very hard to forget the smells. And it's very hard to forget the pictures and the images. This is what motivates me. At some point of my life, I had to trade identity, family, culture, traditions, religion, gods, everything, for the sake of humanity and for the sake of my freedom that makes me a human. Religious groups tried to steal this freedom and leave me with what? My freedom is the most important thing that I have, and this is what makes me different than a cow or a donkey. And I will continue to fight for this freedom. I encourage all of us to fight for our freedoms and to face our fears. My background. I was born as a Muslim for a conservative Islamic family. My father is one of the founders of Hamas organization. I think all of us know what Hamas is. There is a difference between Hamas and Hamas. I know that you're a very educated group, but once I was asked, what's the difference between Hamas and hummus? And I started to realize that ignorance is the enemy. Hamas was founded in 1987 by 7 people. My father was one of them, with 2 main goals: to destroy the state of Israel and to build an Islamic state on the rubble of the state of Israel. So how in the world somebody from my background end up serving the state of Israel, turning his back on his family, on his father? I admire and I love my father. Yes, he disowned me, but I still love him. But what happened? And what is the truth that brought me to this place? If any one of us was born in that environment, what would he be or she be today? If you were born in that shoes, in that environment, as a son of a top Hamas leader, as a Muslim, all you could hear is the truth of Islam. It's your language, it's your identity, it's your culture, it's everything. It's your business. In our case, Islam and Hamas was not only a political movement, it was everything. It was our business. It was our identity. And it was very hard. And it is still very hard for many in the Middle East to turn our backs to our identity, because all of us are afraid of the great unknown. As son of Hamas leader, I learned a lot about Islam, and I went to an Islamic Sharia school. I memorized 1/3 of the Quran, and I spent many years studying the meanings of the Quran. Average Islamic or average Muslim don't understand the language of the Quran. It's not the street language. It's the language that Muhammad used 1400 years ago, and that required from me many hours in prison and outside of prison, in school and at home, to study the real nature of Islam. It was my truth. I was motivated by political, personal, ideological, and national and social agendas and reasons to hate the state of Israel. At the age of 17, I decided to take revenge from the enemies of Allah, first of all, and this is in the Quran. Allah, the God of Islam, does not like non-Muslims. And in my opinion, this is an opinion, I think he does not like even Muslims. I was highly motivated and I was ready to go. I was traditional Muslim, conservative. At some point I became zealous. Then all these factors made me into an extremist. Why? Because the truth was lost from my world. I saw a shadow, and I thought that shadow was the truth. In my reality, I thought shadows of images was everything, and I did not see through. I take another quote from Socrates saying, whoever sees with his eyes is blind. And now, when I look at my Muslim people, I see them still looking at the same shadows, repeating the same things that I used to do. And it's fascinating how many people are stuck in that prison still. And only the truth can get them out of there. Do I know the truth? I'm not sure. I don't think that there is certainty in knowledge or wisdom. All my ideas, my thoughts, including the thoughts and ideas that I'm sharing with you right now, has expiration date in my book. Look back a few years and think about the things that you used to think. Where are they? Your ideas. It is like a dream. And every day of my life, the biggest question is, am I still living a dream, or do I still live in Socrates' cave? I was in a little box of Ramallah, a very small town in the Palestinian territories, and I thought that was the world. I got out of that box to the West Bank. I started to work for the Israeli intelligence at some point of my life. I saw a much bigger picture. And every time I thought that I was free. I came to America. I saw a much, much bigger picture. But I still ask myself every day, do I still live in a box? That's my everyday question. Because it's very easy to get drafted and to find yourself somewhere that you did not mean to be. In prison, after I was arrested by the Israeli intelligence for purchasing guns and trying to take revenge from Israel, I had to come face to face with the reality and the truth of who Hamas is. I hear people screaming on a daily basis and start to question what was going on. Nobody would dare to tell me what was going on. Simply, Hamas was torturing its own members, trying to figure out who passed information on the Israeli intelligence. Hundreds of prisoners were tortured, tens were killed, and I witnessed all that. This is not an exaggeration, it happened. I witnessed for it, and there are hundreds of prisoners who witnessed the same thing. Now let's go back. When my father established Hamas organization, what was the goal? To destroy Israel. Why? Because Israel is an evil country in their eyes. And an Islamic state is a righteous and a state that will bring justice and happiness for our people. So where is justice and where is happiness? What if Hamas became the government at some point? Now I'm looking at Hamas in prison as a mini government, controlling prisoners, torturing them, and killing them. What if Hamas at some point became a real government? and control the Palestinian territories, what will happen? Now, as you see, I had to come face to face with the truth about my father's organization, but the problem that my father's organization was everything for me. I had lots of privileges because of that organization. I was like a prince in our society. Everybody respected me and honored me. So why to question your identity if you're living of it? And if you have a position and people respect you for that? Most people in that position would stick their head in the sand and say, we're okay. That's enough for us. But why did I start to question? That was after I was released from prison and had my first meeting with the Israeli intelligence to come to another truth, that everybody who was tortured in prison and killed had no relationship with the Israeli intelligence at all. I asked my Israeli intelligence officer, why didn't you come to rescue your people in prison? And he said, because none of them worked for us. I said, how come? He said, you agreed to work for us. Did we connect you with any other prisoner in prison? I said, no. He said, what was Hamas' method in prison? Hamas used to bring somebody, torture him physically by inserting needles under their fingernails and burning their bodies to death. And they had no choice but to mention many other names as their network who work for the Israeli intelligence. And Hamas would go and torture the rest of the names on the list. None of those people had any relationship with the Israeli intelligence. Now, I'm learning the truth from the enemy that I wanted to take revenge from. And what if they were telling the truth? I had to test that. And I started an awkward relationship with the Israeli intelligence, my father's worst enemy. I have lunch with them. I go back home pretending that nothing happened. For several years, I had to learn lots of facts and truths about our conflict, or at least our side of the conflict as Palestinian people. I would like to give you an example. One day, I got a phone call that Hussein Abu Quaik, one of the local leaders of Hamas in Ramallah area, entire family was killed. 3 children, his wife, and 2 other children on the sidewalk. I went nuts. I could not handle that. I was part of every operation in the Ramallah area. And the Israeli intelligence did not even give me heads up what's going to happen. I called my handler. What's going on? He said, what's happening? I told him, you did not tell me that Hussein Abu Quaik was on the assassination list, and here you go, his entire family is dead. He said, what are you talking about? We have no information about this. I told him, it's happening right now. I'm at the scene, and I see children torn apart. This is what I see. He said, let me investigate, and I'll get back to you. He investigated. 24 hours after, what happened that Hussein Abu Quaik was driving his car going home to the Al-Amari refugee camp. And he was showing off his M16 out of the window. At that moment, some Fatah militia were shooting bullets on the Israeli settlement on the other hill, the top of the other hill of Ramallah. And the Israeli soldiers, we're talking about 19 years old to 22 years old, sitting in the tank trying to protect civilians in that settlement. They were trying to locate who was behind the shooting. They see the car of Hussein Abu Quaik waving with the M16, showing off for the other Palestinian factions to play the bad guy. And they waited for him to show up again. He went home. His wife took his car. And by the way, it was a stolen car from Israel that they were using. She went to her children's school to get them home. And on the way back, the Israeli soldiers, they have no intelligence on the ground, but they saw the car coming, and they launched a missile and killed the entire family. Now, put yourself in my position, seeing this truth. We're talking about truth and shadows of images. In his reality, it was Israel behind that attack. He would never admit that it was his responsibility, even if you bring him all the truths. Unfortunately, he did not see the other side. I was confirmed, and I believed the Israeli intelligence because I knew every person who was on the assassination list, and that guy was not on that list. Now, it did not stop on that level. He started to seek revenge. He sent 2 suicide bombers that I helped discover. Unfortunately, killed 15 Israelis for the next 6 months to come after his family died. And finally, thank God, I located him and we arrested him. Guess what? Israel did not have enough evidence to the judge to keep him in an Israeli prison. I was the only witness, and Israel could not expose me as an agent for the sake of keeping him in prison. And he was released. And now he's a free man, still living his dream in the cave, looking around and hating Israel and planning more attacks. It's very hard to see the grand picture. And most of us, we rather to stay in our comfortable zones. We don't like challenges. Even when we know that it's a prison and it's a cave, we rather to stay where it's comfortable. In my life and in this journey of freedom, this journey of growth, ascending in the world of intellect, I choose not to be in comfortable zones. And I challenge each one of us to do the same. I don't challenge you with anything that I did not challenge myself first. Religion does not have the answer, with all respect to all religious people. I personally believe that religion is the necessary evil, like the government is the necessary evil. And no one has the perfect answer. Actually, let's look at what religion brought to our world. Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Judaism. What they brought. Compare it to the perfection of the creator of the universe. And this will give you an answer to what religion is. We need to ask ourselves, what are we doing? We're educating generations to come. Maybe we don't mean to educate them hate, but we have to be responsible for every word that we have, because every group thinks that they have the truth. Every group that I met, as you see, Muslim, I came to the United States of America to meet with my Christian wonderful people, and they start to ask me, what denomination you are? I was like, what denomination means? I did not even know what denomination is. I told him I'm a Jesus Christ follower. He cannot give me the challenge to love my enemies, and I cannot take the challenge because I was already in a relationship with my enemies, and it was a very good teaching. And this is why I like the guy. But how about baptism? I was like, I got baptized 3 years ago. No, we gotta get you baptized again in the Pacific Ocean. I got baptized in the Holy Land, where he was born. And you never been there. And I know how it looks like. No, we gotta get you baptized. And they got me baptized. Well, why is all that? Because everybody has personal agendas. Like I myself ask myself why I'm here. I have a cause, right? But many times I find myself putting my personal agendas ahead of my cause. And the cause is only a wrapping that I use to cover my personal agendas. I find myself in that situation a lot. And I like to question myself. What am I doing? What I'm sharing with you can influence somebody. And it could go somewhere wrong. We have to be very responsible of our actions and what we say and what we do. As I said, this is a journey of freedom. There's lots of things to talk about, and it's very difficult to squeeze my life in a small speech. Actually, we wrote a book, and I found that it was impossible to encapsulate a human life with its emotions and experience in a book, and soon to be a movie, and I'm not sure that you can do that either. And I am amazed with people who try to encapsulate God Almighty, the invisible, in words, and say, this is the word of God, and start to twist it and bend it to pass their personal agendas, to lie to people, take their money, control their lives. This is what I have experienced so far. Lies and lies and lies. Working in the world of intelligence for more than 10 years, I learned what deception really means. It's not a dry word for me. I've seen deceived people, I've seen deceivers, and there are lots of lies out there. And a perfect lie is wrapped with lots of layers of truths and facts and morals. This is a perfect lie. I was a lie myself. The Israeli intelligence had to convince everybody to believe that I was for real. But I was a lie. How did they protect me? By liars of truths, facts. They made me look wanted. They put me in prison for 25 months. They attacked my car. They attempted to arrest me and they failed. But it was all a game. And everybody started to believe that I was a Hamas wanted guy. Our goal was to get to the core of the Hamas military wing by simply lying to them. It was my game. And I know how dangerous it is. Again, please to ask ourselves, whenever we think that we know the truth, that are we looking at shadows? Do we see the grand picture? Do we live in a box? Doesn't matter how big it is or not. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. God bless you.
Thank you, Mosab, for those comments. Not controversial at all. Come on. Wonderful comments. Thank you very much for your point of view. Yes, ma'am, please.
I'm curious as to how you avoided being tortured by your fellow Islamists in prison and eventually made it to the Israeli side and were able to contact them, and how you're avoiding a fatwa now.
Well, first of all, please don't forget that I was the son of one of the founders of Hamas movement. Hamas' biggest concern was I get exposed. Actually, I shared with them my agendas and what happened on my conversation with the Israeli intelligence. And they asked me to keep that for myself and to bury it forever because it was very embarrassing. Shame is their enemy. And shame actually is the real enemy that they're facing. It's much worse enemy than Israel. I think for that, they did not torture me. Second, a fatwa. What do you mean by a fatwa?
There's a price on your head.
Well, there is no price on my head. I'm living my life normally, but I know if I go back, by any chance I will be executed in any Arab or Muslim country. This is a fact. Not based on the opinion of extremists. It's in the book of Islam. This is what the followers of Muhammad, who are credible enough and equal to his authority in the Muslim world. Abu Bakr killed hundreds of thousands of people who turned their back on Islam, and nobody can change this mindset in the Arab world. So I guess I will be killed, but I'm not going back anytime soon.
Please, ma'am.
Sure.
There were 3 videos that were translated from the Arabic.
Mhm.
And in one you said on BBC Al Jazeera Network in an audio interview with the host that you never worked for the Jews, that you're here in the U.S. to educate the Christians and to infiltrate the churches to create hate towards Israel. The second one, you say that you are anti-violence, but you spoke to a Palestinian caller, a Christian caller, who knew about a suspected terror operation. And he was asking whether or not it was, in your opinion, something that he should do to turn in this possible bomber that was going to bomb a schoolyard with 30 children, and you said no. You said advocating helping Israel is not what he should do. You are not advocating helping Israel. And then in the third interview, I saw that the real purpose of your book is not to discredit Hamas, but to reveal the killing and murder, and I'm quoting now, killing and murder carried out by Israel and to show the West the truth about the Palestinian suffering. So
What's the question?
I'm just very content. I hear you said today that deception is not a simple word for you. And many of us here know the truth about deception as it's written in the Koran with Kisman, Taqiya, and Maruda. And so I'm asking you to please enlighten all of us here today. How can we believe you?
Well, when somebody asks me from the Ramallah area about give information about suicide bomber, I simply understand the difficulties for any Palestinian in that situation. And I know that any Palestinian who make a phone call to an Israeli authority, IDF or Shin Bet, trying to give them any type of information will be considered as a collaborator, and they will be executed. So simply, that caller, when he called, I told him, don't give information directly to the Israeli intelligence. You could simply call the American embassy, a third party. You could call any embassy of East Jerusalem. You could call the Palestinian Authority, maybe the media, CNN, Fox News, and say, I have information about a suicide bombing. This way, he's not dealing directly with the Israeli authorities to get killed. I personally had the honor to go beyond all the red lines and risk my life for the sake of the Israeli people. But I can't ask every Palestinian to become a collaborator for the state of Israel. That's not my message. That's not my life. And when I talk about the Palestinian suffering, what's wrong with that? There is not suffering. I suffered myself. I was beaten by Israeli soldiers almost to death. I witnessed lots of killing and lots of bloodshed by angry Israeli soldiers. And let me tell you another fact. Within the Israeli intelligence, do you know that some extremists, after they shake my hand, they go and wash their hands because it's an Arab hand? This is not in the Israeli Shin Bet agendas and agency policies, but they were extremists. So yes, there are sufferings, and they're like other side of the story. I don't represent Palestinians. I don't represent Israelis. I'm trying to bring a picture of the grand image to everybody to be able to understand. And here to infiltrate the church, what a plan. Working in the world of intelligence for 10 years, I come and tell the BBC that I am here in America to infiltrate the church. You know, people say to infiltrate the Pentagon, the Congress, the White House, to infiltrate the church, because the church has what, like secrets about like mass destruction weapons? So people can say whatever they want to say, you know, and you can listen, and you can have lots of facts. Don't believe what I'm saying, but try to see farther than just a YouTube video. The story is much bigger than a small clip. But thank you for your question. I appreciate it.
Mosab, thank you.